Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. My name is Nick.
Amine.
And today, since we're both kind of children of the 80s, we're going to talk about some great underrated 80s albums. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that link down below and go check out the Vinyl Den Facebook group. It's a cool place to continue that music conversation. There's also a couple other links down there. There's one for the Vinyl Den merch page. If you want one of these cool Vinyl Den t-shirts. There's also a link for the Vinyl Den Patreon page if you want to support the show. It's always greatly appreciated. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give us the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time we release new episodes. So the first one I've got is one that I think when a lot of people look at this band, look at this album, they think it's a one-hit wonder. But this is an album that, beginning to end, is so much better than just that one song. Of course, that album is Play Deep by The Outfield. So if you're not really familiar with this album, the album is the one that has Your Love on it, which if you're not familiar with it, you can just Google it. I'm sure it's as soon as you hear the first couple of notes,
you'll know
exactly what song it is. Yeah. But like I said, from beginning to end, this is just a really solid album. And it's one that I don't think I've actually listened to this whole thing until I bought this. I got this probably about 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. Like I said, prior to that, it's an album that I've heard a couple of tracks off of, but I bought this album just off the strength of those 2 or 3 songs.
Wasn't this a Record Store Day exclusive?
No, this is actually a music on vinyl pressing here.
Oh, okay.
But it's an album that as soon as that first time I listened to it, I was really impressed with the quality of all the tracks on this album. So this is definitely one of my favorite underrated albums of the 80s.
So for my first choice, Bowie's Let's Dance. Now, some might argue whether or not this is an underrated album, but as Nick and I were talking when off camera, a lot of Bowie's 80s stuff is a little underrated.
I think so.
I mean, this does have some 3 good big radio hits on it.
But outside of those three hits,
yeah,
it's actually a really solid album.
Yeah,
it's a really great
people
album.
Don't really talk about the album. They'll talk about those songs.
Those tracks, yeah.
But the album doesn't get any...
But it's probably one of my top 5 Bowie albums. I mean, it is a great album.
It is a good album. It's really good. I don't know if Bowie's made any bad ones until the 90s.
Yeah.
But that being said, yeah. I actually like Bowie's 80s stuff. Definitely better than his 90s stuff, for sure. But... definitely better than his late 70s stuff. It's like
I
early
can see
70s.
There was a couple of different periods in Bowie's career where I think he tried to do too much musically and tried to go off in too many different directions, and I don't think it really worked the way.
Which is still respectable because he was definitely always constantly pushing himself.
Absolutely. But this is definitely a great album.
Yep. Let's Dance.
So this was an album that originally I wasn't even 100% sure this was released in the 80s. There for a minute, because I picked this album, and then, I don't know why, but I was thinking, I thought this was released in 79. We actually had to go back and verify. This was actually released in 1980. This is a really great album, and this is an album that I think is really underrated, not only in the 80s, but in this band's catalog, too, and that is On Through the Night by Def Leppard. This is, when you think of Def Leppard, obviously you think of Hysteria, High and Dry, Pyromania, which is my favorite Def Leppard album. But this is a much different kind of Def Leppard. It's a harder Def Leppard. It doesn't have that kind of poppy rock kind of flavor that a lot of their...
Well, this is Def Leppard fresh out of the clubs, when they're still trying to cut their teeth and make a name for themselves.
Yeah, it's definitely like a harder edge kind of rock music. And it's an album that, if you haven't listened to this in a while, I think it's definitely worth to go back and check, because overall, it is a really good album.
So for my next one, I'm going to go with something that everyone probably not going to be too shocked about. Alice Cooper's Flush to Fashion, 1980.
Which I don't think I've ever actually listened to this entire album.
This was the first of the 4 albums that came out during Alice's...
Lost period.
His Coke years.
Yeah.
And not the cola. And...
Does he remember recording this album?
This one he remembers more so than the 3 that follow.
Okay.
I mean, he has memories of this album. And he should, because this came right after From the Inside, which was when he cleaned himself up from alcohol and started taking cocaine.
Yeah.
And thanks to Bernie Taupin, by the way. And that was a very disco-y album. I think because Taupin's influence on the co-writing side of it. this was kind of
which
more
was
of a
still, which was still a
straightforward-
good album.
Yeah, it's still a good album, but this is kind of back to rock, kind of back to the rock basics, and it was kind of had an early 80s kind of mainstream punk flair to it with some of the guitar riffs and the simplicity of it. I love this album. This is probably in my top 5 of Alice Cooper's albums.
Is it?
So, yeah. So, but you talk to most people, they're not going to know this album.
I took this from you because I wanted to show you people the back cover. I mean, if that doesn't scream 80s
Excess. Yeah. He was.
I don't think he was sober on the back of this in the picture.
He was and it was cocaine. I mean, he had given up alcohol. He wasn't drinking anymore, but he substituted one addiction for another.
Yeah.
And there's an interview with him a year after this, a year after this, and he's even a little skinnier, almost like bony skinny.
Yeah.
And someone makes a mention of it in the interview, like, you're looking kind of thin. He goes, I'm at my runner's weight because he was a runner in high school.
Yeah. Yeah, he wasn't running.
He wasn't running. Something was running, but it wasn't him. So, but yeah, no, it's a great album. This is another one that's like with some of the ones you mentioned, beginning to end. Every song is kind of unique and different, and
I definitely need to check it out.
It's a fun listen.
So for the last pick, I kind of went back and forth between this band's first album and their second album because both of them are fantastic albums. I didn't want to have 2 albums from the same band in the list though, but so I decided to go with their second album. This is "Wake Me When It's Over" by Faster Pussycat. This is an album that I think just like with The Outfield, a lot of people remember one track off of this album. And Ian, do you know what the track is?
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, this is
it's probably the only Faster Pussycat track I'm really truly familiar with, if it's anything at all.
House of Pain was like the big one hit off of this album. At least the one hit I remember off of it. Mm-hmm. But like with the Outfield album, this is another album that until I bought it probably within the last year and a half, I hadn't listened to this entire album. And I think I'd only heard 2 tracks off of this. And the first time I listened to it, I was really impressed with how great it was. And the strength of this album is actually what made me go back and check out their first album. And I bought their first album used. Actually have a white label promo of their first album. So, definitely a great album. If you are unfamiliar with Faster Pussycat, definitely go back and check out their first 2 albums because they're both great albums.
I'll definitely have to check them out because I haven't listened to any, aside from maybe if they had one radio hit.
Yeah, House of Pain was a big hit there for like a short period when this album
for
was
like
released.
a month.
Yeah, something like that
came out.
Well, that's all we got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Drop us a comment down below and let us know what your favorite underrated 80s albums are, because there's a bunch of them out there.
Tons and tons.
And if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell. And that's about it. Until next time.
Talk to y'all later.
Keep on spinning. Peace.